So Sonic 1 was just alright in my opinion. Nothing bad, but nothing too great either. Although it did do a lot for the genre, and that's why it's important. However, it still left a lot to be desired. But that's what sequels are for, right? A sequel allows the developers to improve on what came before it and make something even better. But you have games like Mother 2 and Zelda: A Link to the Past that do this exceptionally well. But they take the best aspects of the previous installment and refine them to create a truly great experience. And on November 21st, 1992, a day dubbed Sonic Tuesday, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was released worldwide, and it absolutely blew the original out of the water. I first played Sonic 2 as a part of the Sonic Classic Collection for DS a long time ago, and I could never get past the second level. But naturally, I managed to get further along into the game over time, and it wasn't until I played the mobile version for this review where I actually beat it. Sonic 2 really takes that core, speed-focused design philosophy of Green Hill Zone and expands upon it drastically. And because of this, Sonic 2 is a lot faster, and I mean a lot faster. The levels play much smoother this time around, and that allows the player to not only gain a lot of speed, but maintaining it as well. You can end up going very fast in this game, and it's all just so satisfying when you gain a ton of momentum and can just rocket through the stage. Now, it's not all speed, there's still plenty of platforming here, but luckily they complement the levels and don't feel out of place at all. The overall pacing of Sonic 2 is much more brisk than the first game. The game never feels like it's wasting your time. The zones only have 2 acts as opposed to 3, and it works out quite well. The zones end just when you want them to, and then you're off to a totally new location. Now, don't get ahead of yourself. The speed and spectacle isn't just handed to you outright. No, you have to earn it. Speed is your reward for playing well, so if you want to have the most fun while playing, well, you need to practice and get better at the game. And if you're playing badly, you will be punished by ending up in slower, less fun areas of the level. I really like this aspect. It incentivizes the player to keep practicing and improve. Your skill will be rewarded in Sonic 2. In fact, that's what Sonic games are mostly about, retrying stages to get better at them.
Damn it.
And due to Sonic 2's short length, replaying it isn't a problem. The pacing isn't the only thing that got improved though, because the visuals got a substantial upgrade here. In Sonic 1, all the zones aside from Green Hill and Starlight looked pretty bland. But in Sonic 2, the visuals are absolutely fantastic. The colors are so vibrant and everything is very detailed. The whole game is just a joy to look at. The backgrounds in this game look amazing as well. They really complement the zones and really bring them to life. My absolute favorite zone aesthetically has to be Casino Night Zone. I mean, just look at this, it's gorgeous. I love the cityscape in the background and the nighttime setting, the vivid color choices, and all the neon signs everywhere. I could go on about the other zones, but we have other things to cover here. One thing I've neglected to mention is the new character introduced in this game, Sonic's new sidekick Tails. In the game, Tails will follow Sonic around. However, he's not too helpful. His AI is pretty bad, resulting in him getting hurt and left behind. Although he can grab rings for you and occasionally land hits on bosses and enemies. I mainly just like having him around because it just makes the journey feel less lonely. Let's start talking about the individual zones themselves. Emerald Hill is quite similar to Green Hill both visually and mechanically. It has a decent focus on speed and teaches the player what the game is all about while still being fun. It's basically Green Hill on steroids. Afterwards we have Chemical Plant, and unlike Marble Zone in the previous game, this zone is even faster than the one before. You can gain a ton of momentum here, and like I said earlier, it's very satisfying to do so. It's also a pretty big zone too, so you can find a lot of hidden goodies lying around. However, I do have some gripes with the zones, such as the infamous block section and these disappearing platforms here. And I especially hate the disappearing platforms because they don't look any different from regular ones, meaning you'll probably fall victim to the trap. It's really just unfair BS. In fact, that's a bit of a problem in this game. There are plenty of instances throughout where where enemies and obstacles will just pop out at you and catch you off guard. You're not even given enough time to react, and it can be really bothersome, especially since those don't feel like your own fault. With that zone out of the way, let's move on to Aquatic Ruin Zone. And this zone takes that idea of skill mastery and runs with it. As you can probably guess by the name, this is a water level. But don't worry, it's much better than the dreadful Labyrinth Zone. See, in that zone, you were forced to slog through all the water. But thankfully in Aquatic Ruin Zone, the water can be avoided entirely. That's if you're good enough, of course. Now, water is used as a punishment for playing badly, and I really commend this design. But there's just one problem with this zone. Remember all that BS design I talked about earlier? Well, it's all in full force here. You've got drill bots popping out of walls right in front of you, tiny arrows that can blindside you while running, blocks randomly crushing you. It's all very obnoxious and it just gets in the way. The next zone is the aforementioned Casino Night. I already raved about the aesthetics here, so I'll keep that at bay. What's interesting about Casino Night is that it's not really about gaining a ton of speed and momentum. It's more so about using Sonic's unique physics to get around the stage. That's by no means a bad thing at all. The main gimmick here is pinball. There are flippers and bumpers everywhere, and you can use those to traverse the stage and even gain rings by playing slots. It's a very unique and creative zone that highlights how versatile Sonic's physics are. After Casino Night is when the game slows down a bit. Okay, so remember my last video when I hinted at how you could make a slower level fun? Well, here we have it. Now, these next two levels, Hilltop and Mystic Cave, execute that idea perfectly. They managed to pull off less speed-focused levels by offering fun and engaging platforming alongside a short burst of speed, which is something Sonic 1 could have benefited from. Hilltop is a very linear platforming-heavy stage. There are ski lifts to ride, lava to avoid, and they even brought back the seesaws from Starlight Zone. It's a pretty simple zone, yeah, but I think it's a nice change of pace. Mystic Cave Zone, on the other hand, is way bigger and is sort of maze-like. It too has a higher emphasis on platforming rather than straight-up speed. Oh, and watch out for spikes. This stage is riddled with them. I'm personally not the biggest fan of Mystic Cave, but I do really appreciate how well its level design is executed. It's certainly more memorable than Oil Ocean Zone. This zone isn't bad necessarily, it's just so unremarkable, I couldn't care less about it. It's honestly just a really boring zone, and it can be pretty confusing to navigate. It doesn't do anything new, and it doesn't do anything memorable. It just exists. Okay, maybe the next zone will be better. Or not. Metropolis Zone is by far the worst zone in this game, and there are many reasons as to why. Reason 1. When the zone overstays its welcome. Metropolis has 3 acts as opposed to 2 acts, and on top of that, each act lasts about 3 to 4 minutes each, which really makes this zone drag on and on. Reason 2. A tedious and repetitive level design. You constantly come across the same set pieces and gimmicks throughout the same acts, and it really begins to wear on you. I especially hate these giant screws. You have to stand on them and walk in place in order to ride them up, and it's very slow. Seriously, you're only holding one button while doing it. It's just padding, really. But none of this even compares to reason 3, the terrible enemy placement. You'll constantly run into enemies with no time to react, and it can be very frustrating. There are even times when you're thrown straight into an enemy with no way to avoid it. That's just bad design. Oh, and don't get me started on these little starfish guys. And they hide on the walls and shoot tiny little spikes at you. It can be pretty hard to avoid them since they're so hard to see. Metropolis is the only zone that I would actually consider bad. Luckily, things calm down a bit with Sky Chase Zone. This zone is just one act, and it involves Sonic and Tails flying around while defeating enemies. It's not much, but I kinda like it. But the best part about it is the music. I could listen to that for hours. Well, soon after, we reached the final level, a Winged Fortress Zone. Now this is challenge done right. There's a lot of tight platforming here, but it all feels fair, and that's how it should be. But the boss fight here sucks though. Yeah, I guess I should talk about the bosses. Like Sonic 1's bosses, there's not much to write home about. They're all just ridiculously easy. But to give credit where credit is due, the Casino Night boss is pretty creative, but you have to use Sonic's momentum to attack Robotnik, and it's pretty fun. But just like last time, I'm going to talk briefly about the special stages. I didn't like them in Sonic 1, and while the ones in this game are an improvement, I still don't like them. Now this time you enter a special stage by activating a checkpoint with 50 rings, which is a big improvement. The stages themselves are these half pipes, and you have to collect a certain number of rings to get the Dragon Ball, Chaos Emerald. But these stages are pretty difficult since you don't really know what obstacles are ahead. You basically have to memorize them in order to know what you're doing. I personally don't think they're much fun, but at least the reward is pretty good. If you have all the Chaos Emeralds, then you can turn into a Super Saiyan, Super Sonic. Oh, come on, they're not even trying. But this ability makes Sonic run a lot faster and jump higher. It also makes him invincible. However, your ring count is drained when doing it in order for it to not be abused. The final boss fight consists of 2 fights, the first being Mecha Sonic. He's not too bad once you get his pattern down, but it will involve a lot of trial and error at first. Now these fights are a bit of an odd case. You're stripped of your rings, meaning you can't regain health. This results in the player having 0 margin for error. The second fight is with the infamous Death Egg robot. This thing is stupid hard. Its hitbox is extremely sensitive. If you so much as tap its hand, you're dead. You can wait for him to lean over and then hit him, but that would make the fight go on for quite a while. But you have to be very cautious when fighting him or you will die. It's a pretty frustrating final battle. After the Death Egg robot is destroyed, Sonic escapes and reunites with Tails, and the day is saved once again. So yeah, I think it's pretty obvious what I think of Sonic 2. It's an absolutely fantastic game in my opinion. Sure, it has a few flaws, but I can certainly look past them. Sonic 2 has great level design, fantastic visuals and music, and it's all around just a ton of fun. It completely trumps Sonic 1 in every way imaginable, and I highly encourage you to try this game out if you haven't already. It's honestly one of my favorite 2D platformers, and is a great introduction to classic Sonic. Next up in the retrospective is Sonic CD, the black sheep of the classic series. However, it'll take some time to come out since I'm going out of state for 2 weeks. I'll try to have it out soon after I get back. See you guys then.